Hi everyone, this is Kelly from Cozy Reader Kelly, and today I wanted to share with you my May book haul. And before that, I want to share some really exciting news with you all. If you're not interested and just want to get to the haul, I'll put the timestamp down below of when I'll start talking about the books. But first, I just wanted to share with you something that happened just this week that is really exciting. We just found out that Eliza's adoption was finalized this week. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the process, there is a 6-month period between the time, in Illinois, so laws are different from state to state, but in Illinois, there's a 6-month period between the time a child is placed with you and when the adoption is finalized. And during that 6-month period, it's a time where you are the legal guardian of the child, but the state is also responsible for their well-being. So we've had a social worker that comes and checks on Eliza and us and visits and asks questions, about how her development is going, how she's eating, how she's sleeping, the whole family, what's happening and all that. We also have to submit medical records when she goes to the doctor, to the agency, to show how her health is doing and that we're taking her to the doctor. And we also can't leave the state without informing the agency during that 6-month period. So it's not that it's a period where I was worried about anything happening. We treated her like she was our daughter, and we loved her and bonded with her just like we would now. But there is something that is a little bit of fear or whatever when your future might not be completely under your control, because there is somebody else that's submitting to the judge saying whether or not they recommend us as fit parents. And so there is that overlooming possibility that something could happen in the 6 months that would make it so that we couldn't keep her or something like that. The likelihood is super low, but it's my husband and I both just breathed a sigh of relief when our lawyer told us that everything was finalized. And so we'll be getting her birth certificate soon, and she's officially part of our family. And it doesn't change anything about the way we view her, but it does give us a little sense of calm knowing that it's all finished. So that's my really exciting news, that 6-month period is all done and we have nothing to worry about now. We can just do whatever we want, live happily, right? So now let's get on to the books. So I did a few books that I got from my library's having a paperback sale right now. So the next few books were all just 25 cents because they just sell them really cheap. So the first one I got was Romeo and Juliet. I read this obviously probably in high school. I might have read it again in college. I'm not sure. I read several of them in college. But I figured I would check it out as an adult and see how I feel about it now. And then I also got The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. And I also remember that in high school this being the book, the first required reading that I actually really enjoyed. And I don't remember anything about the story, but I remember that feeling of finally enjoying a book I was made to read. So I wanted to check it out as an adult and see if I still had that feeling or if I would have changed my mind about it. So I picked that up. And then I got this nonfiction book called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. And this is a nonfiction book about a woman whose cells were taken and used for science, and so her cells contributed to a lot of medical developments. They were taken back in the 50s. But the problem is they were taken without her permission. And her being a poor black farmer in the 1950s, I think this book will bring up a lot of issues about race and morality and ethics, about even though it turned out for good that her cells were used, what was the ethical implications of taking them without her or her family's permission. And then I usually do not buy books full price. I'm one of those people that I don't pay more than a few dollars for a book usually because I like to get used books and stuff like that. And I just don't have a lot of money to spend on new books. But I've been trying to get this book, Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. And, I couldn't find it used. I couldn't find it for cheaper somewhere because it is such a popular book, and I finally just broke down and bought it from Amazon, and I got it full price, which I don't do very often, but hopefully it'll turn out to be a really good read and will be worth the money I spent on it. And this is about a town in Ohio, which I'm actually from Ohio, so it's kind of interesting that it's about a suburb outside of Cleveland, which would have been near where I grew up, and a kind of perfect neighborhood and family, and somebody else moves into the neighborhood that kind of is an artist and a free spirit, and kind of the way the families interact with each other. And I also know that there's an adoption portion of this story that I think is what contributes to a lot of the controversy, so I'm interested in seeing what my opinion would be on that. And now the next set of books I got are all from Book Outlet, which, though they're not used books, they're all very cheap. I think I paid $40 for 10 books, so it would have been like $4 a book. And the first one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And this is a classic. What are you doing? Sticking your mouth, hand in your mouth. And this is about a man who has a beautiful portrait made of himself, and then he exchanges his soul for eternal youth, and all of the decadences and things that he does in his life all get portrayed in his picture instead of on his physical being, and what that leads to. The next one is After Alice by Gregory Maguire, and this is a story about what happens after Alice goes down the rabbit hole. It's about a friend of hers that ends up down the rabbit hole as well and goes after Alice to try to bring her back. And you know, Gregory Maguire for me is kind of a hit or miss. I enjoy reading. I keep trying his books, and sometimes I really love them. Like, I liked the one, Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. I really liked that book, which was about the Cinderella story from the point of view of the stepsister. I really enjoyed that. But I've read several of the other ones that I didn't enjoy as much. Like Wicked, I liked it, but I wouldn't say I really liked it. Like, it was pretty messed up. You know, he has some really weird things that go on in his books, and so I'm sure this will be really weird, but Alice in Wonderland is really weird, so it might actually lend into his style to be based on a really weird fairy tale to begin with. So we'll see if I enjoy this one or if it'll be like too far out. The next one is Close Enough to Touch by Colleen Oakley, and this is I think it could be viewed as like chick lit romance type thing. It's about a woman who is allergic to human touch, and she's been kind of living an isolated life, and then decides to venture out into the world with her protection on and everything, and she meets a man at a library. So it's kind of fun that their connection is at a library and involves books, I'm assuming, and kind of how their lives collide. So Eliza needed a little break, so she had a little food and is down playing on the floor. So you might hear some noise if she decides to act up while she's playing down there. So let's get back to the books. So the last adult one I have is I Love You More, which is a mystery book by Jennifer Murphy, and it sounds like it's told from the point of view of the daughter of the man who was murdered, and first that the wife is the primary suspect until they find out he actually had 3 wives. So I guess we get to find out kind of how he had multiple families and who is the one that actually killed him and all that. So, you know, I just thought it'd be a fun murder mystery. And now that's the last of the adult books. The rest of these are all middle grade / children's young readers. So if you're not interested in those, you could sign off now. But if you want to check them out, here they are. So the next one is The School of Good and Evil by Soman Shanani. And I don't know if I said that right. And but this has been around BookTube for a while now, and I thought I would check it out since it's a middle grade fantasy. And it's about 2 girls who end up at the school for good and evil, and one of them is kind of like the stereotypical princess looking one, and the other one thinks she's a ringer for the evil school, but it turns out they're switched, so kind of their lives in the opposite schools from what they thought they were going to be in. Next one is Zero Tolerance by Claudia Mills, and this is about a girl in middle school who accidentally brings a knife to school in her lunch bag, and her school has a zero tolerance policy, so she's put in school suspension, and then it has the possibility of a hearing for expulsion. And while she's in the suspension, she meets these other kids who supposedly have done bad things and kind of learns whether there is a clear line between wrong and right. The next one is The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. And this is about a 10-year-old girl who, her brother is shipped out of London to escape from the war. And so she runs off with him because her mother treats her badly because she has a physical deformity. And they end up living with a woman named Susan, and kind of like in the middle of war and dealing with that, and also dealing with family issues and living in somewhere that is not with their actual family, and whether they become a family. Next one is Stella by Starlight by Sharon Draper, and this is about a young girl who lives in the segregated South in North Carolina, and I think she just is living her life thinking that things are okay, you know, it's as good as it's gonna be, and things aren't really affecting her personally, but then she sees something that she's not supposed to see, and it sets off a change in her community and in her world that kind of makes her fight back. And this is supposed to be a really good story, so I'm excited to read that. The next one is Amina's Voice, and this is about a girl named Amina who's in middle school, and she's always been best friends with Sujin. And when they get to middle school, Sujin makes friends with a popular girl named Emily and decides to change. I don't know if Sujin is a girl, but decides to change her name to something more American. And so Mina's trying to decide if she needs to change to fit in and what her identity is in middle school. Next one is The Ethan I Was Before by Ali Standish, and this is a boy who was happy and adventurous, and then an accident happens that kind of changes his life, and his family moves somewhere else, and there he meets a girl that kind of brings him out of his whatever he's thinking, and kind of brings back some adventure in his life, and maybe kind of brings the secrets to life that he's been holding back. And those are all the ones that got a book outlet. This next set I got at Half Price Books. I like to get collections at Half Price Books because they're often, if I want the box set, they're really expensive. So if I can find them at Half Price Books, I can get them for cheaper. And this is the whole set of Anne of Green Gables. And I don't remember how much I paid for it at Half Price Books, but I know it actually was free because my mom gives me all of her books, and my mom reads a lot of like the popular kind of mass market authors, so I usually get a pretty good amount back from them when I take them to Half Price Books, and that's when I buy like things for my kids there because I have like a bunch of books to turn in. So I actually got them for free. And then the next set, I didn't actually buy them this month, but I didn't, in my last haul, I bought them back towards January. In my last haul, I did not include any of these because I didn't do any of the children's books, so I thought since I was doing some children's books, I would just throw them in. And they're all from the Barnes & Noble collectible editions. And I spent a lot of my Christmas money on these because I really wanted a nice set of the children's classics to put on my daughter's shelves for when we can start reading them together. And I'm not going to like tell synopses because these are all classics. I just want to show you how pretty they are. So they are all like with these shiny covers. It's the Jungle Book. And they're all shiny and glorious and have the fancy pages, and they all have pretty pictures. This is Rikki Tikki Tavi, which was one of my favorite like movies growing up. I watched the cartoon and I loved it. Here's The Wind in the Willows. I just like how shiny and pretty these are, and they look so amazing next to each other on her bookshelf. A Little Princess. The next three kind of have a similar look. There's Heidi and The Secret Garden, and Anne of Green Gables. I bought this before I realized I was going to get the whole box set, but you know, I have 2 kids, so maybe one will live on each of their rooms. And then this is The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, and the last one is The Story of King Arthur and His Knights. They're so shiny and have the shiny edges and everything, and they look so pretty on the spines when they're all up on the shelf. So that's it. So if you haven't watched my haul before, every time I buy a book this year, I'm going to give money towards a charity that involves education. And this time, in honor of Eliza's adoption, I'm going to give to Foster Care to Success. And that is an organization that does that gives scholarships and grants to kids, and well, I guess they would, by this time they'd be young adults in the foster care system. And it also provides academic success coaching, care packages to college students, student emergency funds at college, and textbooks. So they provide all that for kids that have grown up in the foster care system that might not have the ability to go to college on their own because they don't have the family support. So that's where I'm going to give the funds towards. If you want to find out more about them, I'll link to the charity down below. Thanks. I'm really excited. We'll probably do a celebration sometime soon to celebrate Eliza, and I'm excited to share it with you all. Thanks. See you next time.